titled Technology, Innovation, and Partnership from Lab to Home. We are, on behalf of Sheikh Iqbal, who is actually hosting this panel. I am Farhana Zulkernine, just because I'm on site. I'm welcoming you guys to the panel. And then basically, I'm going to hand it over to Iqbal to introduce the panelists and conduct the session. After the initial talk, you will be asked if you have any question, please raise your hand, and we have somebody who can take the microphone to you so that the panelists online can listen to you, okay? So you will need the microphone to ask the question. So just raise your hands. Now over to you, Iqbal, if you're here.
Thank you, Farhana, for co-hosting from the site. Welcome to this plenary panel too. Before I start, I would like to really thank IEEE Services for giving me and the panelists the opportunity to discuss one of the really timely thing in these days. So before I start, is a good afternoon, those who are in Europe, good morning in USA, and those who are in Asia, probably for you, good evening. So today, the title of our panel, technology, innovation, partnership, and here one of the term partnership, which is a key role you will hear from the panelists, and that's a huge area, but we are focusing on the home part, from the lab, from the home. So I'll introduce the panel before I do a brief couple of sentences about me. We are professor at Marquette University. I run UBComp lab. I'm also president of UBtrix. I have successfully completed 15 NIH funded projects. I have also got funding to start up companies from NIH. So that's why, I was very energized to organize this panel. So we'll go into that. So today we are very pleased that we have, 4 world-class researcher and innovator are here. The first, let me introduce Professor Sumi Helal. He is one of the pioneer in the smart home technology. I still remember 2004 when I visited Iowa, where he was also there. He and Professor Chang started that smart home concept in 2002-3. And you see, those things we see it now. So what needs to be done, right? That we'd like to hear. Then we have our next panelist, which is from Europe, Mauro. He's a director in the National Institute of Health in Italy, but he has led many European projects, and particularly in robotics, therapeutic edge area, even advising companies. So we are very pleased to have him with us. Then our third panelist, Professor Li-Shan Chou. He's one of the pioneer in the rehab technology, human motion analysis. He has led many projects, and particularly in USA in the rehab area, he's one of the leading figure. And then we are very pleased to have here Thyaga Nandagopal. Actually, he is right now the division director, one of the division director of Technology Innovation Partnership at NSF, and NSF has started this new directorate, last year, and I'm very pleased to have him here, because at NSF, a lot of current ideas you see. That's actually his brainchild, you can say, and particularly he will talk about TIP, which is the new directive, the really the research, technology, innovation, can bring it to our hand. So we are very pleased to have him here. Now, the format of the panel. So briefly, I'll talk about what is this panel about. I mean, the theme, and I'll throw some challenges. Uh, then I'll ask each panelist to talk about their view, the challenges, solutions, maybe some experience, probably 6 to 8 minutes. Then we'll move to question answers, and from after the question and answer session, probably I'll request the each panelist to give some concluding remarks. Okay, so now the theme. The theme is, the title itself says that, okay, in the lab, we invent a lot of technologies, products, how we can bring those homes. And when we bring those homes, what we need is that, okay, we need to have, proof of concept of a product. But, you have a product, you have a proof of concept. That may not be, useful or maybe usable right away. But those may have a huge market, and also in terms of social benefits. I'll talk about a couple of things. For example, about 20 years ago, at UBComp lab, we built some technology for controlling lights, viewing camera. And I see after 20 years, it's a very popular product. Probably the Ring. Anybody comes to your home, and from your phone you can see, you can talk, even from the conference you can monitor the motions and everything. And not only Ring, there are many other companies are doing that. But these technologies came long back. I mean 50 20 25 years ago. But it took like 15-20 years to be really in the home. Another thing I would like to mention is that, okay, these days Apple, we have iPhone and other products we use. Apple has a Apple tag, you have seen, and I don't know how many of you use it. It's very, very useful. Anything you add, it can tell you the direction, the distance, and that came to market last year. But if you look at my slide, I have put a paper. It was published 15 years ago. 15 years ago, the same technology was published, and as a researcher, we published. But we see the things now, right? So it took like 15 years, right? So what needs to be done so that society can benefit from here? That's kind of the motivation. And on my slide, the last two items I put right now, non-invasive hemoglobin level, that's already published. Put your finger, you get glucose level on your phone, and that's published last year or so. But still we do not see any product, right? So what are the challenges? How we can take to the next level? So in terms of significance, you see that the innovation, technology, and partnership is kind of really the initiative for forecasting all the the products, or home products, for commercialization. And actually it will give the opportunity for the entrepreneurship, for creating entrepreneurship, even leaders, even from academics, or the published papers from their some products. And as a professor, we want to involve students, and students can be involved in those projects and bring them to the industry. And it can even be a birth of a startup company. It can help, in national economy, whatever the country is that. So, how we can move forward. So, in terms of challenges, obviously, all proof of concept will not work, like commercializing. So, what can be done? And also, when you go to the commercial sector, it's difficult, like from the lab to that. So what are the things needed? And particularly if we do not have any sustainable market, we cannot do. And particularly one of the things I want to mention, that if you have a product, if your customer doesn't use it, there is no value. And NSF and particularly NSF at USA, they started that I-Core program where you interview like 50, 100 people and really find out, you build a technology that may not be useful, but what customer wants. And that has a huge, huge impact. And we'll hear from our panelists their view. So the way we'll go is that I'll request, this is the order, I'll request first Sumi, Helal, then Mauro and Li-Shan, and then at the end, Thyaga will talk about their view. Sumi, the floor is yours now.
Thanks, Iqbal. Thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to participate in the panel. I am from the University of Florida, but in fact, I am in Rome right now. So Mauro and I are from Italy, participating from Italy. I spent some time in Spello. I'm now at Rome at Termini, and I have the pleasure to deliver my position statement from the hotel. So let me get right to it. See here. So just first, I think I don't have control over animation here with the PowerPoint. So I had some animations planned, so now I have to just work around it. But since my position is based on my total experience, it's very important. That's the only methodology by which I'm going to be making a statement. So it's important that you know a little bit about me. I'm a professor of computer science and digital health. I'm an entrepreneur. I founded 5 companies. I won the UF Innovator of the Year 2011. My patent portfolio include 4G, 5G communication systems, Internet of Things, digital health, and smart spaces. And my patents have been licensed to Google, Motorola, Apple, Bosch, Samsung, T-Mobile, and of late, Verizon. What I'm going to say here is just a position statement, brief statement, that will make reference to a phrase that I coined called academic entrepreneurship. And the next thing is I'll try to explain what is academic entrepreneurship in terms of its ecosystem elements. And if there's time, I'll just briefly go over an example of a particular ecosystem in the area of digital health. So most academics include as a mission the generation of knowledge. And that knowledge sort of flow into the outside world, the immediate region, and the country and globally. But it flows as a knowledge transfer. That is a typical model, and that is a mission. Urgent societal and global challenges, and of late economical challenges as well, mandate the broadening of this mission. And the broadening could be through a self-transfer of knowledge into innovations and value creation. So instead of taking the new knowledge that's learned and push it out, you want to sort of take it through a stage of digestion and of creating something on top of the knowledge, which is innovation. So it's a self-transfer of knowledge into innovation and value creation. And that would render the next step not to be knowledge transfer, but to be knowledge and innovation transfer. In other words, some of the innovation, the inception of innovation and creation doesn't have to happen after knowledge is transferred outside of the universities. In other words, universities need to be involved in the beginning of all these innovation. And I refer to this as academic entrepreneurship. So to just give you an example here that will be difficult, I have content that you will not be able to see because I have overlay of, for every element here, I have an overlay. So let's see what can be done. I don't know if Philippe can help me. Can I use, Philip, can I use the standard, can I share on my computer, or do I have to share through, you need to share your screen. Okay, so I will share my screen. I'll stop here. I will share screen. Okay, thank you. Screen sharing is easiest. All right, share screen. I'm sharing the whole screen now. Entire screen. Allow. And now let me find my my slides. I apologize for that little delay. So here is my slides. Now I'm sharing. Thank you, Philip. That was very helpful. Now I have control. And I mentioned these slides already. So I already gave rise to the concept of academic entrepreneurship. So what is the ecosystem of academic entrepreneurship? I believe there are 4 key elements to that ecosystem for universities to get into academic entrepreneurship. First is curricula. Second is interdisciplinarity. Third is resources, technology, innovation, and inception grants. These are very different from SBIR, STTR concepts I'll talk about in a second, but resources, so curricula, interdisciplinarity, resources, and then the culture itself, the spirit and culture of entrepreneurship. You can do the 3 above, but if the institution doesn't promote and create that culture and implant that spirit, it's not going to happen. So this is very needed. Curriculum, particularly, I refer to creating new modules, new courses that are applied in nature. We do have those, but we need more. In fact, every course need to be required to have a percentage of applied content. So that becomes a constraint, 17% applied content. In fact, the delivery of any course need to involve industry. I've seen that in Europe, in the United Kingdom, when I was spending time in Lancaster, where many courses have as standard a bunch of lectures dedicated to industry to come from outside to deliver the lectures, and that enrich the applied element of the class. Finally, entrepreneurship courses, and I see like University of Florida and many others have those already in several colleges. College of Engineering take lead in entrepreneurship courses. So as you can see, there is an agenda, there's stuff to be done at the curricular level. Then I go now to interdisciplinarity. And it's both in education and research, not just research. So we need courses that are designed to be made visible, to be offered for students in different colleges, different disciplines. At Florida, I talk about my example, digital health. That is a class that it took me some effort to make it visible in multiple colleges. It's not something that's easy, but that's what we need. Make courses to be taken by completely different disciplines together. And the instructor has to figure out how that can happen. But you want to bring these diverse students into the classroom in these interdisciplinary classes. Of course, interdisciplinary research is important, and that requires tangible interdisciplinary involvement in the research proposal. For example, if NSF, NIH label the announcement to be interdisciplinary, then there has to be serious involvement in the multiple disciplines related to the proposal. That has to be taken very seriously. If we do that, then we bolster interdisciplinarity. What is the theory here? Where did I come up with this, that interdisciplinarity enable academic entrepreneurship? I have no theory, but I have a very deep gut and experience that that's what it takes. Third is technology innovation inception. Grants other than SBIR, STTR. And that's where NSF TIP, for example, and other might follow, is to put resources right directly on the hand of students. Let me go down here. Directly to students, especially a graduating student like a PhD in the last phase, open a competition for them and for faculty as well. But grants for that concept of internal innovation, creation, not to create companies yet, but you want to bolster innovation within the compounds and the quadrant of universities. That is, I think, what I'm referring to precisely here. Technology innovation inception grants other than SBIR, SHR, right in the university. Of course, SBIR involve universities, I'm talking about entirely, and with a focus to students. Get the students to get the money to sort of take that extra step before they graduate. Finally, the spirit and culture of entrepreneurship. This is key. And here I'm referring to administratives, and faculty and student need to embrace that spirit holistically. And when I say holistically, I mean across all policies, across everything. Think, for example, of expanding tenure and promotion policies criteria. It has to reward entrepreneurship. It has to be built in, written in to these policies. Think about expanding senior design project from a 1 semester or 2 semester thing. Think of something much bigger than that. Now you are instilling a spirit of entrepreneurship. I take University of Southern California to be taking serious step as far as that. So they provide a good model to learn about. But overall, universities around the world need to really pay attention to this. So it's a shift of a mission, and it's a shift of culture. Now, I have just one more slide to show you, but I want to say that in reality and practically, there is no single ecosystem for academic entrepreneurship, but rather multiple. So if you're doing health, like in digital health, it's a slightly different ecosystem than energy and climate change, than water, than urbanization, and then smart agriculture. I know the panel wanted to take things from the lab to home, but most of these things have home products and home services. I want to skip this. I just referred to one element, which is digital health. Well, we all know digital health must transform. If it doesn't transform, it's going to be a huge problem. So this is Deloitte telling you what is future of health according to calculated forces of change. When you read this, I don't have time to read it, but please take a note to try to glance over that report by Deloitte. The Forces of Change, the Future of Health, 2019. It's an amazing thing. When you read it, you can see that the ecosystem I'm talking about, it is really needed badly. So that's an example of digital health. I started by creating a class in digital health, teach it as interdisciplinary. I started to look at these visions, but there are more elements to the ecosystem that would enable us all. And at the end, it will be just for digital health. And there should be something more personalized for other areas of concern. I'll stop here.
Hi. It's my time. Okay, thank you. Thank you to the organization and to the friend in this session for the kind invitation to be here. It's an honor for me. I'm a senior member of our society, and in my role of director of the National Center for Innovative Technologies in Italy, I have a macro vision, in effect, quite similar to that of Sumi. I thank you, Sumi, with you on many concepts you have read. And okay, but I wish to talk about several perspectives. To put innovation on the health market is not so easy. We have heard Sumi on that. But generally, from the institutional perspective, institutional stakeholder, we can facing the industrial creativity and the industrial research, not only university research, to be transferred in the market. But this is today mostly a problem with the compliance with medical device regulation in Europe and the provision of Food and Drug Administration in USA and so on for many countries. Generally, you have no support tool to have a view of the positioning or the qualification of the technologies in the innovative technologies in this case. Thus, you need to have specific normatives, the harmonization of norms, because you must take homogeneous to the market, and you must have some tools to regulate by law the implementation. This is the actual time after the 2 years of pandemic now with in Europe, in particular in Italy, with the national plan for resiliency. And generally, you cannot have a pullable clinical trial. Thus, you cannot have strong conclusion, robust point of view to assess. And the time for assessment became longer. And this is not useful for industry and also for patient that has no access to innovation. In general, there is also a market perspective or sparse stakeholder perspective that could be related to this kind of point of view from Roger and Gladwell. Generally, we can have some categories defined by Rogers for innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. Thus, stakeholder answers in different way. In the same case, you can have a point in which you can have a sort of magic moment for an idea. If you have a look at the Gartner report on the web, you can understand what is the new idea and what is the real marketing devices actually at disposal of the patient, of the stakeholder, of the operators also. Generally, 5 main factors are related to the adoption: the advantage, the compatibility, the complexity, the trialability, that is the pullable system that I talked before, and observability. Thus, all these kind of characteristics could be of help in introducing with consciousness for each stakeholder, because consciousness is in digital era one great problem, in my opinion. They help to insert a technology within the market. In Italy, we have approached in the last 2 years several kind of technologies, something more complex, something more simple. In this case, I see in my photo the iCube robot from the Italian Institute of Technology from Genoa, I suppose you know. But we propose a consensus conference on rehabilitation robotics, because there are so many solutions that could be used in the hospital, but also in the so-called community house that we are designing thanks to the national plan actual post-pandemic, and also most probably at home. And but we have no clear pullable statistics from the clinical trial for all these kind of technologies. Thus, we propose a consensus conference that we finished two months ago, and we gave the results from the jury to the Ministry of Health to understand the way in which they could pose new level of assistance, essential level of assistance that are related to the reimbursement. This was one of the last work for us. Other work was made in another project together with the Ministry of Health and the Axological Institute in Milan to compare this kind of gadget with the cave for virtual reality. Excuse me for the phrase here, that is virtual reality and augmented reality. I prefer the second because patient could recognize its own camera, its own supply within the home. It could be most motivated with respect to the virtual reality that could be useful for more useful for education starting from our study. We use also the so-called technology acceptance model to understand differences between cave and this kind of gadget that at present are not considered medical devices, but the realization, software realization within that most probably must be well positioned in this case. These are only some example, but as you know, many devices since from the first processes in 70s, thanks to the actual wearable, ingestible OTA2 devices, we have had a really great development for sensor and wearable technologies. Thus, this is the new network that we can use in the territorial stage with respect to the hospital, to the acute situation. But this is also a problem of infrastructure. As an example, one more technology is coming within our health market, that is the edge computing, and this could be relevant from economic point of view, but also from the point of view of pre-elaboration of raw data and the possibility to defend from hacking better the actual situation. But this needs a good and appropriate infrastructure. That is in my opinion, is to extremely support the federated database for the data, not silos, and also a sort of federated learning for the AI application, the artificial intelligence application, to many activity of assistance for patient. I suppose this could be a matter for discussion within the national health system. The last work we are doing is to build observatory for assistant technology and also for the software, because software is a new class of medical devices that encounter the drug, encounter the IoT, and so many apps must be the Troja horse of the national health system and of the ecosystem at the regional or local level. Thus, from this point of view, we are qualifying this kind of technology, but I wish to stress that the tool for assessment, that is one technical specification from ISO and European normative stakeholder, this could be a good way to extend the energy labeling that we know for our, I don't know, fridge and so on, and to the concept that we use in the IT world. Thus, from this point of view, compliance with the regulatory tools must be absolutely assured in Europe, also the GDPR, the privacy and security level. Thank you for this opportunity, and I pass the talk to my colleague.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I am currently a professor in the Department of Kinesiology at Iowa State University. I was originally trained as a mechanical engineer, but did all my trainings in the hospitals, working with physicians. So a lot of my research has been, let me see, try to understand how to figure out and quantify mobility impairments in different populations of the patients. And so one of the areas I'm doing is my research has been focused on human movement analysis and try to investigate the underlying mechanism which governing gait performance and the balance control, and also to see how does diseases and aging and the environmental perturbations affect our mobility. So in my work, we have been kind of modeling the human locomotion as a combination of a central nervous system which is consists of our brain, and also with the structures which allow us to deliver the movement, which is a musculoskeletal system. But at the same time, there are also feedback loops involved in guiding the corrections of our actions, which is our sensory systems, which are very simple, and but at the same time, it also allows us to kind of to be able to include the perturbations to the system. For example, if you have a joint diseases, then there may be a perturbation to your musculoskeletal system due to the injuries. And if we are all getting aging as well as getting traumatic brain injury, then these kind of perturbations may be going to the central nervous systems. And how would all of these injuries, degenerations, or diseases play a role in affecting each of the system involved in our human body, and eventually affect our ability to locomote our body from a point A to point B, or to affect our physical activity performance. That's what I will be doing in my research work. So typically, in order to do all of this, we collect all this kind of data in the research laboratories with the camera systems, with the instrumented floors, and so on, and to be able to collect the physiological signals from the muscles and the strength of the muscles and so on. And then we put all this together. But nowadays, in order for us to kind of bring these technologies and this kind of informations back to the individuals, to the clinicians, and to be able to allow them to utilize such knowledges and informations in making their diagnosis and making their treatment. We needed to have some technologies to bring that out from the laboratories and get into the clinical settings. So certainly, then one of the areas is utilize, wearable sensors, which could be IMUs, could be accelerometers, and so on. Not only to collect the body motion data, but sometimes could be also to be assistant to engage the cognitions of the individual during their performance of physical activities, like walking, like moving in the buildings, like doing the stair ascending and the descending. And well, here certainly some of the figures didn't show up, but again, in the areas of biomechanics, we will also use modeling to complete our analysis. And then with the interdisciplinary work, then we can use machine learning to identify the patterns of the body movement in order to allow us to able to create the mappings and to allow us to facilitate the solutions and the simulations. And again, all of this will allow us to get into the interventions we are able to do, and the trainings we are able to do to better enhance and prevent falls and the motions of maintain the intact motions of the individual. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Thyaga Nandagopal. I'm Division Director in the Innovation and Technology Ecosystems Division of the newly created NSF Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. And again, my thanks to Iqbal for inviting me to this panel. And again, this is a very timely panel, and I appreciate all the comments shared by Sumi, Mauricio, and Li-Shan. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about why we are doing this new directorate. I know we have NSF has been in business for over 70 years, and there are many inventions, including the internet that we're using today to communicate virtually, that have come about as a result of NSF investments that have made their way into practice. So why are we doing this today? It primarily stems from the recognition that science and technology are essential to address national needs, and they're a critical piece of enabling opportunity everywhere. And it is important for any country that really wants to position itself as a global leader to invest in science and technology. And we have seen the results of science and technology driving society forward since the end of World War II. In fact, all of 20th century has been a phenomenal exposition of why it's important to invest in science and tech, right? And we are not happy with the pace at which this is happening. Iqbal mentioned that sometimes it took 20 years for certain inventions to make their way into market. And our question, and again, this is the question that our director has posed us in some sense: why can't we do this faster? Why can't we do this bigger? And that's precisely the question that we are trying to answer. That doing things at speed and scale, of translating ideas from lab to market, really requires us to intentionally think about translation differently, along the different ways in which our previous speakers have said eloquently. We have to look at the new types of people who need to be educated and trained and connected with our researchers, right? And the new type of training that we have to provide to our students to think about impact. And we also have to build solid, robust partnerships that will facilitate these kinds of translations to happen. After all, if you don't know who is willing to take your technology to market, you will just stop looking for it, right? Or it could be very frustrating to go look for it from by yourself. So how can we facilitate the creation of those partnerships that can allow these things to happen faster and at scale, right? So that's the vision of this new directorate. NSF has multiple disciplinary directorates: computer science, engineering, geological sciences, and so on. We do not have a community of our own. We see ourselves as serving the entire scientific community. So we call ourselves a horizontal directorate. We are seeking to strengthen and scale what we call as use-inspired and translational research, right? And our primary function, of course, we're going to start with the focus on critical and emerging technologies, because that, of course, is where we anticipate the next generation technologies, the big breakthroughs to come from. But that doesn't mean that we'll be limiting ourselves to that. But our principal focus is going to be on accelerating the translation of research. That acceleration is going to be key, because that's how we see this directorate and NSF helping to improve US competitiveness, grow our economy, and creating a much diverse workforce. And that's very important. We face a huge workforce talent shortage in this country. And I'm sure that is present in many other countries too. And we think that going to the traditionally underserved populations that have not participated in a big way in the STEM enterprise is an important piece for us to address this. So what we want to do essentially is to change the model of an individual inventor coming up with the technology, and then if they feel like it, they go out and push it to market. We want to change that, because that stuff sometimes it goes in start and stop, it goes in bursts. People give up halfway, or they think it's too hard, so they don't even bother pursuing. We want to change that model to say, let's take a societal problem where we form those partnerships, where we form multi-sector teams and bring people to work together and try to solve those problems, so the market, once it sees a solution, it can immediately pull it into practice. So we want to change this and enable this paradigm shift to happen, right? So with that in mind, what we really want to do, again, remember, it's all about speed and scale. We want to do what we are doing, but do it faster and do it in more areas and do it better. We are starting a set of programs that are going to foster the kind of training and partnership building that is going to happen. So we want to create ecosystems where we help teach the nature of innovation and what do you think of co-creation, working in multidisciplinary format, working in multi-sector teams, working with industry and public sector and nonprofits and societal organizations to develop technologies that matter, right? Teaching the notion of impact from the get-go. And we also want to establish translation pathways where once you have an idea, you want to do a startup, we take you through how to go from the lab to the market, the entire pathway, right? And also not just think about commercialization, but also think of other ways to generate impact, right? And we want to do this by building robust partnerships with the industry, with the venture capitalists who will be ready to invest in these new ideas, with governmental organizations, agencies, and as well as community colleges and other places where we are going to look for the future workforce. Right? That's our goal. Here are some programs that we already have up and running. The last two programs are new programs that we just started in the last 3-4 months. And again, one way to think about these is we want to start with startups right? The Small Business Program, SBIR, STTR. We want to teach people through the Convergence Accelerator how to think in a multidisciplinary fashion, but working towards speaking a common language that thinks about impact. We want to train people how to become entrepreneurs through the Innovation Core program. We want to help build partnerships with industry to, that kind of take ideas from what do you call as like conceptual research based to a more impact and application based. And we want to create alternate ways to look at impact and open source and creating ecosystems that can increase the level of innovation by sharing knowledge in a much more open fashion. That's another way of looking at impact. We want to create that through the post program. And lastly, but not the least, we are looking at NSF shouldn't be having to solve all these problems because honestly, the problem is too big to solve just by ourselves. So what we are looking at is to create these regional catalysts. We call them regional innovation engines, which will essentially take a formula, do it on a small scale, show it in an immediate context, but then repeatedly apply it by drawing in resources from state, local governments, and venture capitalists and other firms to repeat that formula on a much larger scale and increase the impact in a regional fashion. So these are the range of programs we have started already. We are thinking of doing more in the near future. So I would request all of you to stay tuned to our programs. Please sign up. You can go to the NSF website, search for TIP, NSF TIP, Google search will take you there. And I will encourage you to sign up for a mailing list because we have some fantastic programs that are going to come up soon. And I would love to engage with you. And if you have any interesting ideas around that, we would be happy to hear more about it. With that, let me stop and back to you, Iqbal.
Thank you. We heard from each of the panel very insightful talk and vision. So now we'll take questions from the audience.
So if you have any question, please raise your hand and somebody will bring the mic. Yes, please. If you are online joining this session, please see if you can type your question in a chat window. That way we can address those questions as well.
So many of you talked about the drivers of exploiting research towards some industrial products. Instead, I would like to know something about your opinion about what could be instead the major challenges towards exploiting research into industrial products or software products or in general products that can be used on the market. Thank you.
I can go first, and I'm happy to let others chime in as well. I think some of the big challenges we face is lack of awareness, right? So first of all, the researcher who's developing a solution needs to understand who is a potential customer. And I think Sumi and Iqbal had spoken about that earlier. Discovery, right? Figuring out who's your market, potential market, and who you should talk to. That's number one. The industry, on the other hand, should become aware of the existence of solutions. So, how would they know about it unless they reach out? So, or have some kind of a collaboration or some knowledge or sharing mechanism. Conferences are one way of looking at information sharing, but technical solutions, software development doesn't happen that way. That knowledge sharing happens differently. So that two-way awareness is really important, right? Somebody has to make the initial effort. And without that, you cannot go to the next step.
I would like to add just a few things about partnership. Could partnership come to help here? If you have a great idea, one barrier is to go to market is by the time you check all the boxes, it is too difficult. You cannot do it by yourself. You can be a major innovator with a beautiful mobile health app. But for that mobile health app to become a product, as Mauro mentioned, software is now becoming a prescribable thing. The doctor prescribes software, right? For that to happen, you have to go through significant clinical validation, for example. Who has the resources and the experience? Too difficult, very challenging. So Thyaga's program, directorate for TIP, has a P in the TIP, and that's really important. Don't go it alone. Analyze the whole landscape, find out your partners, and team up with partners to be able to jump and to provide products and services at the end. But to think that you can do everything alone, that's a significant barrier to go to market.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to just add one thing. I think the awareness is a big factor. In the labs we have seen a lot of things, but in the company, the culture and promoting the awareness may be useful. I can tell you one story. I remember, like, about 22 years ago, one of my students, he joined Samsung, and at that time, obviously Samsung was not this, but I asked, what do you do? He said, I read research papers. I said, why? So we want to see that any of those can be used, because these research papers are open, right? Anybody can use it. And now see, obviously the patent and other things are there, but there are a lot of open things are there in the research paper. That's why the initiative, what Thyaga mentioned about open source and other things. I think that's the part. So I think from the researcher point of view, hard, but I think the industry, the culture, a little bit of shift. And one best example I mentioned about Samsung.
If I can add something, in effect, starting from Thyaga and Sumi, in effect, I talked about consciousness, but in this kind of world, I see the information, the formation of all the stakeholders, and the possibility that they discuss together. Because in the last year, I participate to mostly 50 webinar or meeting related to the digital therapeutics, because we have a problem in Europe to put digital therapeutics in the market, because we have no rule for the prescription, we have no clear statement about the reimbursement, and the new medical device regulation pose very, very high impact from the point of view of logistics, organization, and also economic impact to the industry, because they must perform some kind of clinical trial for that. And the clinical trial for that are not easy. And the definition of cost is not easy, because we have an app and drug and maybe other medical devices. From this point of view, we have a different way to treat each kind of product. And thus, this is not easy to find a whole rule capable to enable industry to put on the market this kind of product. Thus, this is, for me, not only a problem of a partnership that is essential. Research and industry must be very, very strongly linked, but they must talk with the institution for the rule, because several evidence are changed in 1 year, because I was pressing industry, researcher, to talk the same language. This is not easy.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, the language working across different professionals, all the way from who are your target population to who will be the prospective users of the tool you are developing, and then how do you come up with the tools which can be easily interpreted, and also not only just to tell the differences between A and B, but also to understand what is the reason behind, for example, the diseases or diagnosis. I think those are very important.
If I can add a quick note, that we have to all humble ourselves, that the world is not already harmonized, and all the pieces are there, and it's a matter of partnership only, because there are missing pieces. So I take here as an example FDA. FDA struggled with a digital therapeutic in America until they figured out, well, we have a missing piece. Put it in place. So they created the Center of Excellence in Digital Health within FDA, and that becomes a missing piece. Now they're creating it, even though still there are barriers and challenges on cost. But now small innovators can go to that center to figure out how to move forward. So we have to humble ourselves that it's not like everything in place. No. And funding agencies and government agencies have the responsibility of figuring out the missing pieces, which are part of the ecosystem, and try to put it in place.
Okay, so that was an invigorating discussion. And Iqbal, I have to take a leave because I have to chair another session, but there are people who will take more questions here. So please continue the session.
Yeah.
One thing.
So from if there is any question from the audience, otherwise we have only 3 more minutes. I'll move into each panelist. Kind of last statement from the panel. So any more question from the panel? So if not, then we'll move to what I'll do is that I'll request each of the panel, one concluding remarks. But I'll start first. Since all the technologies, the partnership we heard, I feel that if we can have really automation in the assessment, that will be a huge thing. Talk about digital health, talk about digital therapeutics, the assessment. Like simple example is HIPAA compliance. It takes huge amount of time. Can it be automated, right? It can huge things. So automation, assessment in everywhere. With this, I'll stop. Who wants to go next? Sumi?
Sure. I will just say the key word is, in my opinion, platforms. Everything Thyaga mentioned, and it's amazing. I would love to see the programs coming out. That's what we needed for sure. But we need to focus on platform. NIH experimented with platform in the past by creating these U52 programs where a lot of announcement comes, but you're building a platform, and new PIs have to use the platform, have to add to it, so the thing keep going up, and it really makes the research funding doesn't have to be too much, and the results are obtained quicker, and the evidence is much higher. So I'm looking forward to see platform coming out of the programs from NSF TIP.
Yeah, and I would say the first step to making an impact is to have the desire to have the impact. Do not think that writing papers is your life's goal. That's the wrong thing. Look at anybody who's famous in the research community today. They are famous because of the impact they have had in a practical way, not because they wrote some fantastic papers, right? So be eager and don't take no for an answer. That would be my takeaway message.
Thank you, Mauro.
From my side, in effect, I wish to strong the common language of all the stakeholders. This is, for me, the key enable technology when we have already a mobile technology with the 5G and 6G in the close future. But I agree with the idea of the platform, because it's a visible thing, a visible place in which you can apply a common language and you can share that language. Most probably this could be really a good key enable technology for the actual time. Digital era calls for information and education with the common language, absolutely, for all the stakeholders.
Thank you. Li-Shan?
Well, I would just say be precise and accurate in describe your finding, and knowing what you are knowing, and be very aware of your limitations and technology constraints.
Okay. Thank you, Li-Shan. I heard from each of you. Anybody else have any other comment? If not, I'd like to really thank all the panelists, all your views, and we look forward, to the future journey. And also the audience, thank you for attending this session. We look forward to see you next year in Chicago, either some panel or some other form. How with the tip, I said assessment, like, how we're doing, so I'll invite again, some people, and we go from there. Thank you again. Thanks, everybody.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.